Welcome to our Troublemaker training. We call this Troublemaker because a group of women and myself in my community have kind of been showing up at school board and city council, and we literally got called troublemakers by my city council. So we decided that was a great name for a training, and we are going to help you guys all become troublemakers in your community as well. So what we know is that these kind of right-wing culture wars have just become a never-ending cycle, right? It was like anti-masking, COVID protocols, and it was anti-CRT. And now we're moving into book bans. So we want to prepare you, help you organize so you can fight anything that's coming, down the pipe on these types of things. So what we're going to focus on tonight is how can you effectively organize people in your community to fight back on book bans, to fight back on these anti-DEI initiatives that are happening. One thing I want to say is that if you have not started anything, if you're just really upset about this and you don't know what to do about this, you can absolutely bring people together in your community. We focus heavily on suburban women. I know there's some men in this call tonight, but I also know that women tend to think that they're not qualified. If you don't know everything about every single issue, if you're not really into politics, you don't feel qualified. And I want to tell you, if you care and you want to make a difference, you are absolutely qualified. There are so many women who stepped up after the 2016 election, formed groups, and are making huge differences in their community. And I also guarantee that you will not be doing it alone for long. I have not met a single woman who formed a grassroots group who is leading by herself. Like, people are stepping up to help. You will absolutely not be doing this alone for long. So I start off by saying, build it and they will come. And what I mean by this is that a lot of people feel a little overwhelmed. Maybe you're kind of alone in your community, or you only have a couple of people that you know who kind of feel the way you do. That should not stop you from trying to organize and get people together on this. If you start a group, start a Facebook group, start however it is that you're going to do this, other people will invite their friends. It will grow just organically. You will be very surprised. And I'm sure the women who are going to be talking later will probably tell you that that is true. My local group that we started in 2016 went from about 12 people to 750. Many of you are in our Sweep National Facebook group. That got started on a whim by a woman in Kentucky. She had about 15 friends, and it grew by like 100 people overnight. And now there's 213,000 women in there. So these things will definitely grow on their own. So just start with who you know, and you will be completely surprised by how quickly it will grow. All right. How do you get started? What are some things you need to think through when you want to bring people together to organize around these book bans, around these school board issues? The first thing I'm going to ask you to consider is just how are you going to communicate? You have to be able to be in touch with the people that to plan, to get people together, to bring people in. So there are lots of ways you can do this, and you just have to figure out what is best for the people that you're going to be communicating with the people that you know are going to be coming together. Facebook. Okay. Many of us have a love-hate relationship with Facebook, but it is a pretty good place for community organizing because it's a very low barrier to entry. You start a group, people, all they have to do is click join, right? They don't have to go to an event. They don't have to attend a meeting. It's a way to get them involved. It's a way to immediately build relationships because you're going to have conversations. You're going to recognize names in the group. You can make it private. I suggest you make it private, invite only. So just not anybody can jump in there, trying to control for the trolls that will definitely show up. But it's not the only way to do it. So just think this through. Some people just use an email list and communicate that way. We have a lot of communication tools now, Slack, Signal. There are so many ways you can organize. So just think through, how am I going to do this? How the people I know going to best feel comfortable communicating? The next thing to really think through is establishing your parameters and your focus. Now, I know tonight we're talking specifically about taking on book bans in your community, but if you're going to be forming this group, it might move into social emotional learning next, or maybe you'll go back to a mask issue, or maybe there's other things you want to address. So what is your group? Is this just going to be masks, or is there other things you might want to focus on? Who is welcome in this group? Is it open just to like progressive Democrats? Is it open to anybody who cares about this issue? Do you want it just to be people in your school district, or are you going to widen it to other people? Think about these parameters, because it is much easier to start with them and enforce them than it is to suddenly find out your group is huge and unwieldy and you can't get anything done, and then trying to push people out. And definitely stick by your parameters. You're going to have people pressure you. They're going to say, oh, my friend is in 2 school districts over and we need to let her in. If that's not part of your code, then don't do it. Because like I said, it'll just grow and get a little bit out of control. The third thing, and I cannot emphasize enough how important this is, these are hard issues. You're dealing with just off the wall things that are challenging our children's education. It's upsetting, but you need to make these organizations and these groups have some kind of social component to it, because the reason people come back and the reason people stay involved is because they've made friends. They have made a social connection and they want to keep doing this work. So, one of the things that Katie always said when she started Red, Wine, and Blue was that she went and talked to women who had started these grassroots groups, and they all said the same thing. I got together with friends over a glass of wine and we started to do this because it was a social component. It's one of the reasons we're named Red, Wine, and Blue as our group name too. So definitely do that. And I know it's hard now because you can't meet in person as much. If you can meet in person, that's even better, because then you can really establish those friendships. But COVID is obviously making that a little bit difficult. So Zoom is still a thing, but you can have a happy hour, do a half hour before your meeting, have a little happy hour so people can meet each other. And then the other thing is make the planning fun. So do those icebreakers, be a little cheesy, ask people fun questions about themselves. And then like also celebrate your successes, right? If you have you want to get 5 speakers for your school board and you get 5 speakers, you better be celebrating that in the next meeting, praising people in your Facebook group who just did an amazing job, making people feel really welcome and included, make it fun. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on before we get to our real life on the ground speakers here tonight is to delegate. Now, I know a lot of us are type A personalities and you want to take it all on, but you cannot do that. So it is really important when you want to take an action like going to your school board, or maybe you're going to have a rally around this, is to really sit down and plan out all the components that you need, all the things you need covered. And then you need to find people in your group to help you with that. And the one thing that every woman I've talked to who leads a grassroots group has told me is that it's amazing how people's skill sets just come together. Someone's good at finance, they handle money. Another person's a graphic designer, they can do amazing things to put on Facebook. Someone else is great at writing, they'll help people write speeches for school board. Everybody has a skill set. And the thing is too, don't be afraid to ask. People are actually very flattered. If you go up to somebody and say, I think you'd be great at this, you have an amazing skill to do this, people are flattered to be asked, and they actually will be more invested then. If they're part of the process and they're heavily involved, they're going to be more likely to come back. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share now, and I'm going to check to see, did Julie Collins come back, or did she still have?
I am here, but I'm not a co-host, so I couldn't help out with some of the stuff.
Oh, sorry, Julie. She was having some technical problems. So I am going to bring up Julie, who is an organizer with us, and I'm going to spotlight her. And then I got to go all the way down alphabetically to find Rasha.
Oh, I can find her. She's right up. But I can't highlight her. I'm not a host.
Oh, I got her. All right, there we go.
There we go. Hi, Rasha. How are you?
Hello.
Well, thanks for coming and joining us tonight. I know you are from, it's Loudoun County, and that's how you say it, right? Loudoun County, Virginia. So tell me about how your group was formed.
So we formed Loudoun for All. And actually, just a shout out, I didn't know this, but one of our board members, Amanda Bean, just texted me and she's like, I'm in the Troublemaker training too. Like, she's taking the training, you know what I mean? Just, coincidentally. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally gonna call you out. So over the summer was, when we had our, national news causing school board meeting, right? Over policy 8040, which was the transgender bathroom policy. So over the summer, everybody started kind of talking, like all these like kind of activists and people who had been on Facebook in different groups. Because by then we'd already been through COVID, right? So you could already see kind of the divide happening. So then I was approached, and so was Amanda, and then a third board member, who's our favorite white male, Mr. Todd Kaufman. So we all formed and we decided to start a political action committee, and we called it Loudon for All. So by the time we actually found someone who knew how to do this officially, right? Like how to even file the paperwork. Like, I don't even know. So we got the paperwork filed, and then October, the news hit of like sexual assaults and how the right was using those sexual assaults to attack the transgender bathroom policy. And we were like, that's enough. So we got on it. We set up a website, we set up a Facebook group, we put out a fact sheet, basically debunking every single thing that the right was saying, right? So we handed out those facts. At the time there was an election, so we had the Loudoun County Democratic Committee help us out, and they handed out the flyers with sample ballots at like early voting and stuff. So that's where we really kind of got our beginning, and then we held a rally at the school board. Katie came down, was awesome. That was like our first rally, our first kind of like, brush with the press. And then suddenly we had all these people coming and like, how can I help? How can I do this? Press reaching out to us all the time to do press. Like it's been amazing.
But you guys have had things like, you've had fist fights, right? And
yeah, that was the June meeting.
And calls for and they're banning books too, right? They're trying to ban books. Have they been successful at doing it?
I'm sorry?
Have they been successful in banning? I'm sorry. My voice is scratchy because I do actually have COVID.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But did they actually were they successful with banning a book?
So they have been successful with banning one book. So there is one book, and it's the book that you see screenshotted everywhere, right? It's Genderqueer. And they did actually ban that at first. So they got that banned, and then I think it was our school librarians, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I think it's our school librarians who filed an amendment, an appeal, and then it was, heard again, and they still banned it. So that is the book that was banned. And then, but the other books have not been banned. And
okay.
Yeah. So what we did, do you want me to go into that yet? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So go ahead, tell everybody what you guys did, because this is what Troublemaker training is about. We're telling folks the things that you guys have done that cause good trouble. So yes, please go ahead and tell us what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is we actually reached out to a local bookshop owner, and she is progressive. She's actually really involved with the local NAACP branch. And so she's a bookstore. So she's awesome. She took the initiative. She did like she pulled books that were challenged, and she went on the American Library Association's site and saw like the most challenged books of the last year, and then put together like a list of all these books and got as many copies as she could of each book. Now, when these books are challenged, they're actually made more popular, and it's going to be hard to find them in stock, right? At the time, the big hoopla was about Lawn Boy. And so they wanted to ban Lawn Boy, which hasn't been banned, thank God. So we wanted to just get 50 copies of Lawn Boy, right? And like pass them out at the school board meeting, but then it turned into, well, I can't even find 50 copies of Lawn Boy to buy, Yeah. So, wow. So that's when we reached out to her, and she put together this whole list for us. And that's what we've been doing. We made a sign, it's banned books. Get your banned books here, even though they're technically challenged books, but
Yeah.
And we put up that sign. We have the books at every event, the last school board meeting, they actually couldn't even put up the sign because the school board meeting room was so packed. There was like no room to even like pass out books or talk about books. It was all just about masks, and keep the masks, leave the masks. My mask is dirty. Wash
it. It actually amuses me a little bit because I, as a person who's went to school in the 70s, was able to get my hands on books that truly shouldn't have been a child reading. And if I could do that without the internet, just imagine what our kids could do today.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's something that I think about a lot. I mean, I grew up with very conservative parents, right?
Uh-huh.
And I learned about so much about my own self, right? My own self, my own sexuality, my own, so much from the school library, right?
Right.
So like to take that away and try to ban this stuff, because that's just,
So
it really wrinkles.
I know it's awful. It's terrible.
I'm really happy to introduce Stefana and Jen, who live in Orlando, Florida. They are really in the epicenter of a whole bunch of stuff going on down there. If you guys have heard of Moms for Liberty, which is the basically the right-wing group that is really pushing these book bans across the country, they are located in Florida. So Stefana, what other books are you guys having challenged?
So in Orange County in particular, we have 4 books. So genderqueer, even they removed it within days of that October 26th school board meeting without a review. And so they say they're going to have a review committee to review genderqueer, but there's also Born a Crime, Trevor Noah's book, Lawn Boy and All Boys Aren't Blue are being challenged. They officially have challenges filed. Born a Crime and Lawn Boy have committees formed. So those 3 books will be going through a formal challenge in Orange County. We have in Indian River County, Florida, there is a school board member who's a Moms for Liberty member. And she was trying to have 55 books removed without any review right off the bat from the library. Polk County today, 16 books just came off the shelf today while they are going to be reviewed. So they remove them while under review. In our county, we do have it in our policy that the books should stay on the shelf while they are under formal review. However, we only have 4 copies of Lawn Boy in our 220 schools. And of those 4, all 4 copies got pulled by the district so that they could give them to the review committee instead of keeping them on the shelves and buying 4 new copies of Lawn Boy so that the review committee could review them. So Lawn Boy is not on the shelf right now. And then All Boys Aren't Blue says that it's in stock and available. There were supposed to be 3 copies available at one of our local high schools. We had a high school student go in there, try to ask for it, and they said, sorry, that book's not available right now for checkout. So that's a shadow ban on All Boys Aren't Blue. So we know our district is violating their policy. We've called them out on it. We're filing FOIA requests to get documentation as to when they purchased the books, how many copies they should have. We did find out how to access our online catalog. So we have actually gone through, just because we know, even though we're currently only at 4 books, Florida legislation has a lot of bills going through right now that could remove many, many books off the shelves because they either are going to be classified as CRT or making a child feel bad or gender or sexual orientation. And so we are going through and we're cataloging all the books that we find nationwide that come up on these lists. And we're taking note of just how many books are currently in stock, which titles we have, which titles we don't have, which schools they're in, how many copies are lost, how many copies are overdue. And we're taking note of all of that so that we know that if these bills pass, we can say, look, you have just removed 300 books from our libraries, from our children. And this is devastating, particularly in Orange County. We have 20% of our middle school and high school students identify as LGBTQ+. And we consider ourselves a very welcoming and inclusive city. And so we put a lot of pressure on our school board to make sure that they can't just say that they're allies and not do the actions to back that up. So.
And I know, and now shadow banning, if you guys have not heard, that is actually a thing. So like they're saying the books are still on the shelf, but they're just not checking them out. So it's kind of a way to get around that process. So it's definitely something you should check out if this is happening at your schools. But I know you guys have actually, I mean, I know you filed FOIA requests. I know you're keeping the pressure on your principals and superintendent. And I know you guys are obviously going to school board and speaking out, but I know you've also formed an alliance. So can you kind of tell people a little bit about that and the coalition that you put together?
Go ahead, Jen.
So we took it upon ourselves. We started this fight against the school board with the books back in November when they first pulled genderqueer, because we were completely outraged. You know, it's violating First Amendment rights flagrantly. And it's not fair to the many LGBTQ students that we have in Orlando or in Orange County. So we started just the two of us doing it. And through the beauty that is Twitter, we connected with other women throughout Florida who are also working on projects to combat Moms for Liberty, keep schools safe, you know, all the same liberal ideals that we all have, that we want our kids to have a nice, diverse, and inclusive public education. And so what Stefana and I wanted to do was, instead of becoming another one of those for Orange County, we wanted to only focus on the book aspect and the censorship aspect. So we decided to name ourselves the Freedom to Read Florida Project, Florida Freedom to Read Project. And like I said, we've connected with these other groups of women from across the state, who we have 2 on each coast who are fully recognized 501c3s. We have in Brevard County, we have Families for Safe Schools. And then in Sarasota, there is Save Our Schools. So we're kind of connecting a web throughout Florida to help other people fight these bans, so we can show them the tactics that we've used and the methods that we've used, and also share the contacts that we've made along the way. Because, you know, for 2, you know, suburban Orlando moms who only just started this really in November, you know, we've had meetings with the ALA's Office for Intellectual Freedom, the Freedom to Read Foundation, who am I forgetting? Southern Legal Council. Who else am I forgetting? We're making a really good path forward to, our end game is, we would prefer to avoid litigation and just have the district say, oops, we were wrong, we'll put the books back. But they don't want to do that, no matter how many times we ask. So we are forging ahead with a lot of connections where we are going to be able to say, hey, if you're not going to do this, then we're going to see you, because this isn't fair. This is a violation and it's not fair. It's not constitutional. It's not the way that we do things in 2022, right? Like,
yeah, can you guys touch on that a little bit for people to understand? Because I don't think a lot of people know this. Like, libraries have a process. So just explain a little bit about what you mean by lawsuit. Like, what could you be suing for, like process violations? Or, because that's obviously something school districts, especially conservative or fiscally conservative school districts, are not going to
they
like.
don't want to pay for that.
Yeah.
So I have no law training, but I like to go down the rabbit hole. And so right after this happened in October, I started going down the rabbit hole as to, you know, what precedent is there? Because there has to be something with access to information and ideas in schools. Children deserve some right? They have to have it. So of course, the first case that I found was PICO versus the Board of Education Island Trees. And then I went down a hole and found some more. And I realized improper motivation was was something that's pointed out often in these cases when they rule in favor of the library and in favor of keeping the books on the shelves. And so when our school board member stood up that day and said, I hope that this book is removed based upon what I have heard, we knew we had something. And so we kept digging into that improper motivation. And within a few days, the school district was interviewed by our local paper about what happened. And the superintendent said, the leadership team met, reviewed the book, and we determined that it wasn't suitable for our high school audience, which also goes against their policy. So their documented policy is that when a book is challenged, a committee is formed with parents, media specialists, sometimes high school students, if it is a high school book that's coming out, as well as leadership. And everyone must review the book. And through my research, I had found the Miller test, and they used the Miller test to determine whether or not the book qualifies as obscene for this environment. And so, and we had found that Fairfax, Virginia had actually just come out with their committee had just released that genderqueer was to go back onto the shelves. So at the next school board meeting, we brought this up. We showed up to speak. We did our quick little, you can only, like Jen said, speak during public comment period if something is on the agenda, and our school board purposely keeps controversial topics off the agenda. So if it's not on the agenda, you only have 30 minutes total, which is usually 10 people.
3 minutes per person to speak.
Yeah.
They cut
So so we show up early, we line up, we get our spots, and we share our piece. And we gave them a list of the court cases that we knew could apply to this, right? And we asked them to make a proclamation, because they kept on saying, we're allies, we're allies, we're allies. We said, well, then make a proclamation. And if you're going to pull this book, you need to replace it with 5 other different titles and say, we're not trying to limit these voices. We just feel as if, we've made this determination. At that point, we were just pushing to get as many books back onto the shelves as possible instead of having them removed. At the next meeting, they came out and they said, well, we're just kidding that, we made this determination and we had this ability, or that it wasn't necessarily we're just kidding, but they said we're within our legal rights to pull this book because under Tinker v. Des Moines, the school district has the responsibility to limit speech if it could cause a substantial disruption to the classroom. And so that case has never been applied that way to books on the library shelf. It was also very disingenuous because genderqueer was never in the classroom. And it was in the library for over a year without there being any disruption. So they can't say that, oh, there's a very high likelihood that there would be a substantial disruption now if we put this book back on the shelves. So we kept on pushing to the point where I got a statement from their lawyer saying, nope, we're within our rights. This is it. And I said, please don't do this. We don't want to have to push. And he basically challenged us to get a lawyer. And so that's when we kind of did our, kind of just went at them on Twitter.
I just want to tell everybody out there, like, there is like a whole bunch of steps, you can just go from like talking at your school board to actually hiring legal counsel. So there, and I think Stefana and Jen have an amazing amount of knowledge about the law on this for not being lawyers. So that's wonderful. Anyways, I want to thank you guys both for coming on and sharing all you're doing. And thank you for like really taking on this fight. Cause I know you guys, like I said, had a lot going on in Florida around this and dealing with a governor who's really not very cooperative on any of this. So thank you both so much. We totally appreciate it. I am going to screen share again while they take us all off of this and get back into the presentation. I'm going to go into best tips and tricks. Give me 1 second. I got to get forward in the present. Oh, I went too far. Best tips and tricks, get a little Wonder Woman there. So we're going to just go over what are the things you need to do to show up at school board? How do you get organized? What do you need to do before you show up? So the first thing I need to say is that you definitely need to show up, right? Because otherwise the only voices in the room are these enraged parents on the other side. You need to show up and represent to the community that there are other people beside these loud yelling people. You need to be that counter narrative. Go on the offense and call this stuff out for what it is. It is a book ban. It is people pushing a political agenda on our kids' education. Don't just let them get up there and talk about parents' rights that all sound really nice. You need to kind of call out what this is. And your goal is not only to influence your school board, but it's also to influence your community because people are not aware that this is going on. So you need to make sure you're sharing this information so that your community knows. We need to get ourselves in the media. They have Fox News. They have an ecosystem. We need to make sure that the other side is being covered and represented. So getting ready to go to a school board meeting, or getting ready to like really approach the school board on this, what are some of the things that you can do? Number one, get your group together, you're organized, you've got your people who are willing to do something. Start off contact campaign. You just need to contact your school board members. So is it email, phone calls, letters, however it works for your group. But the one thing you definitely need to do is don't just like put on Facebook, okay, let's send emails to the school board. Nobody will do it. You need to hold their hand, give them the email addresses you want them to send it to, give them a template of a letter or an email or whatever it is to send. Definitely don't want to send the same letter because nobody will read that. So you want them to all have, a differentiation. So give them some talking points, tell them to share a personal story, but give them an outline of how it's done so that they actually will take that action. The second thing, you definitely would need to have some kind of a social media campaign about what is going on. Honestly, this is a great thing to appoint somebody in your group to do, to help them have like a leadership role and get really invested in the cause. But your goal is to inform the community. It's not just about your school board, right? I am going to guarantee that there is a substantial number of parents in your community that have no idea any of this stuff is going on. They don't know about any kind of anti-CRT, anti-DEI efforts. They don't know about book bans. If it's not happening in your community yet, then they probably do not know it is happening anywhere in the country. So it's really about raising awareness. And of course, social media is the way to do that, right? Everybody is there, well, not everybody, but a substantial number of people are there. So you've got to meet people where they are. And you can do this through, sharing other people's personal posts about what's going on. You can put videos of wonderful speakers, or you can share news articles. If there's like a local paper or a state level paper that's publishing about this, definitely make sure that's getting on social media, because you want to raise awareness. Nobody wants their community to look like they're kind of like out of control or like right wing, they don't want to be seen as the community that banned books. I mean, the reasonable majority does not want that. So you need to raise awareness about it. The other thing for social media that I just like to touch on is not everybody knows how to use social media. I mean, if you're like in your 50s like me, or 40s, Facebook, you're probably pretty good at. Twitter, though, is a great and effective tool for communicating what's going on, but don't presume everybody knows how to use Twitter. So, get a group together, have a lesson. How do you retweet? How do you quote tweet? Get a list of everybody's handles so you can tag each other. Have a meeting and figure out who are the stakeholders in your community who need to be tagged on Twitter. Your school board members, your school district, your local reporters, business leaders, anybody of influence in your community. Figure out what those are and then make sure you're tagging them in it. Also, you got a graphic designer, make some cool graphics and memes. Red, Wine, and Blue does a lot of this. So if you want some examples of some fun graphics, go onto our Facebook page, Red, Wine, and Blue USA, and you can kind of scroll through and see some of the things that we've done. Create a hashtag, right? All of this, if your group members are all sharing this as a group, their friends are going to see, and it's going to have that outreach that you need in the community. All right. Obviously, you need to attend the meetings, but do not just put on Facebook, okay, everybody, we're going to show up tonight for the school board meeting. You need to be much more coordinated than that. So create a Facebook event so that you can have people signing up, that you can share information. You can check in with those people like, okay, you coming, what's going on? Let's make sure you're coming. Here are the details. Honestly, I recommend more like a sign-up genius or something of that nature, because you can share it on Facebook, but you can also share it on Twitter, and you can share it through email. The beauty of Sign Up Genius is you also capture everybody's data. You get emails, you get phone numbers, you can create a list of people who have responded. And then you can also communicate with them outside Facebook, because again, Facebook controls the algorithm, they control what gets seen. So you need to have another way to communicate. So definitely create something on Facebook, but I would also find another method to try to communicate it. And then when you do show up for a meeting, try to show unity. You want to show, like, look at, we've got this big group of people who are coming in to oppose this. So maybe you have on same colored shirts. Maybe you're all holding the little same sign. We had women up in Cleveland who were fighting masks. They all came in wearing masks that said, keep schools open. But it's something that draws attention to show that you have strength in numbers and you are here to represent. And then the last thing is showing up to meetings is part of it, but clearly you need people to speak. And again, it's not something you just want to leave to chance. You just don't want to throw that out there and hope people show up. And you also want to make sure that you're hitting all of the angles and topics that you need covered. You don't want everyone just to stand up there and say book bans are bad. You need people to cover from all different angles. So really make a list of what it is that you want to, touch on. Make sure you have people, who's going to speak, and then make sure that all those speakers are covering all the points that you need made. And I will, in a minute, show you some talking points that we put together that you could use, to help convey that at your meetings. The last thing is to familiarize yourself with your procedures. I think like Stefana just said, they don't do public comment in theirs. They have to do anything off agenda at the beginning of the meeting. You need to know, how long can people speak for? When do they speak? Do they need to sign up? Is there a limitation on speakers? You need to know all of those procedures so that you can be efficient. Because if it's only the first 10 people that get to speak, I guarantee some of the Moms for Liberty are going to show up there and take the first 10 spots, and that's it. So you need to prepare ahead and know what the procedures are going to be. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is, obviously you need to gain attention. This is great. You need to show up, you need to speak, you need to be vocal, but you also need to get attention and raise awareness. So what are some things you can do in your community? And we're calling it think outside the box, like think of creative and new ideas of how to get attention. And I'm going to let Julia Collins jump in here and cover that.
All right. Actually, I have been reading the chat as we have gone along, and there have been some wonderful ideas in there as well. But things you can do are hold a positive event, like a school supply drive to support the teachers and pass out information on bans.
Sorry, I keep screwing it up.
Okay. Sign big thank you cards for the teachers and the librarians. Pass out banned books at meetings. Stock little libraries with banned books. Students in some areas have started banned book clubs. You can highlight books that are being banned on social media, share the subject stories and awards that they have received. Yard signs to support your side or your students, things like, you belong here. Wear t-shirts with the banned authors, books, and wording about the bans. Sidewalk chalk is always a good one. And you can change your profile picture to you holding banned books. And then I saw, people were talking about running, and, running for school board is definitely something else that you could do that's a thinking outside the box. And I suggest that if you do it, try to run as a slate. My best friend and several ladies ran as a slate for their city council, and they won. And they helped sweep their city. And then the other thing is a read-in of banned books. Now we had a read-in this past year, and I also saw in the comments that somebody said we should do a nationwide read-in, and I just wanted to put that in because I know Katie's on here somewhere, and Julie, so that you saw that, and maybe we could think about that, talk about that a different day. But we did have a read-in. We were downtown at the State Board of Education, and we all brought books that, definitely would be on their list for wanting to be banned, and because they are, accurate history books. And we had a great turnout. We were literally outside for 2 hours in the rain. There was a counter protest that the other side had. And so it kind of got a little contentious, but I thought overall we were very successful. We got tremendous amount of really good earned media, good press from this, and it went really well.
100%. So this is a really effective way, before a school board meeting, or just if you want to do a protest to draw attention, maybe get some earned media out of it, be able to talk to the press. All right, I'm going to go over, and you do not need to write these down. There's a lot. So I'm going to email these to you after the meeting. So please do not feel like you need to take notes on all of these, but these are some of the talking points you could use in meetings. Go with your core values. Kids need to be safe at school to learn. We need to prepare our kids for the 21st century. They need real history, not fairy tales. And like I said, directly call out what they're doing. I can't believe we're talking book bans in 2022. This isn't parents' rights. This is them imposing a political agenda. And call out the fact that these books are basically all about LGBTQ or against people of color. their authors, the issues. That's what this is. Own the whole individual freedom too, right? You get to decide what's right for your child, but that doesn't mean you get to dictate values for my family. And the other thing is to own the patriotism, right? The right-wing extremists love to wrap themselves in the flag. So, but we talk about free speech, independent thinking, equality, and what they're trying to do is censorship and basically the antithesis of that. Hey, a lot of us are moms. Let's use that mom expertise, because I think I think Rasha touched on this. When books get banned, sales go up. So we know the kids are buying and reading it. Plus, they're jumping on their phone to read passages now. My final thoughts, just a couple of things. This is a very hard time for teachers and librarians. So please reach out and support them. Send them emails of support. People have been doing coffee donut drives for them. Show up at the school board and support them and support what they're doing. Like Stefana talked to you about, learn your book review process at your school, because they have one. And I guarantee that 95% of the time, they are not being followed with these book bans. Principals are just pulling books off of shelves. There's no review process. Parents who are complaining are not filing actual complaints with their school. The other thing you can do is, if it's not happening where you are yet, or you might see it might be coming, watch other school districts that are experiencing this. You can watch their videos online. It helps you prepare. We had some women come on from Connecticut who did this around DEI issues, and they were able to find the talking points from the right-wing speakers and prepare answers for them. And they were ready to go when it hit their school district. And the last thing, I will send you guys a tweet that came out today that really broke down the fact that, like, the right-wing playbook is going around the country and they are cutting and pasting their complaints, and they're doing a really bad job of it. Like, they're sloppy, they're missing things, and you can show a complaint from Florida with a complaint in Ohio, and it's like word for word the exact same. So they're not putting a lot of effort and time into this. Anyways, this woman on Twitter had a really great breakdown of a complaint in her district, and it really showed you what to look for. So I will send that to you guys as well. All right, so that is the end of our training. I know you guys got this. I hope you got a lot of great information out of this. I am going to stop my screen share, and I'm going to see if anybody has any questions. I know there were probably some in the chat. Adrian, is there anything that
Yeah. Hi. I'm sure we'll get more as we're talking, and there was a lot. I'm going to try to consolidate them based on similar concepts. So one question is around, like, if we wanted to get help from an organization, like, is the ACLU or the ADLU able to get involved in stuff like this? Or if we wanted to seek help from a lawyer, what kind of lawyer do we go find?
Stefana and Jen, do you guys have an answer for any of that? I know you guys are working on that.
Yes. It's very hard to establish a contact with the ACLU. And even Deborah Caldwell-Stone has told us that currently their focus is mostly on voting rights, which is fair enough. But it is hard to establish a contact with them, which is why we wound up going through the Southern Legal Council. We saw a post on Twitter about how they were looking for college students to do pro bono work for credit and work experience. So I would suggest to anybody to follow any nonprofit legal organizations that you know in your area, because we're kind of coordinating with them right now. We have our contact at Southern Legal, and she's trying to bring in people from ACLU and where else was it from, Stefana?
Lambda Legal, because
Lambda, yes, yes.
So yeah, so we posted on there, hey, you're looking for pro bono cases. When you're looking for pro bono kids, we got one for you. And she ended up reaching out. So you never know what stupid tweet is going to get a response.
It could be a lot easier to start, smaller on your local level than trying to get in with ACLU. A lot of times with ACLU, you'll have to fill out a form or leave a message, and who knows where that's going to wind up. So if you can find nonprofit, or if anybody knows a family, somebody has a family, hit them up. Because,
reach out to your networks. Reach out to your networks. You never know. There may be a lawyer and they're willing to help you with this. But the other thing to always say, you need to find, if you can pull money together and you know, get a source to do that, you can find a First Amendment or constitutional lawyer.
Yeah.
There's constitutional law lawyers that would cover this. So that's probably what the specialty would be. Okay, Adrian, another question.
Okay, another question is, because some of these book ban efforts seem to be coordinated efforts that are not necessarily like coming from inside the school district, is there a way to get school districts to require speakers to provide their address and kind of prove that they're local so we can prevent outsiders from coming in?
Well, I will just say that I think that's up to the Board of Education. My district requires us to give our addresses, but does not require you to live in the district. Stefan, I saw you raise your hand.
So in I think it was 2019, Florida actually passed that any Florida citizen could challenge a book. So it definitely opens it up. Every state, I guess, is different. So it might not be that you actually need somebody who is in the county, or even like, I know that usually it has to be because like our district still has, the filing has to be done at the school in particular where the book is. So that does usually limit people to the county, but you don't need to be a parent at the school. So just putting that out there.
I will just say that I think you need to broach this with your school board or try to have them set the rules around that. I will just say from experience, this is off topic for book bans, but we had an abortion ban in my city at the local level, and it got very contentious, of course, and the board finally made it that the people who lived in the city were able to go first. Like, they gave us priority. They didn't exclude people. I mean, we had people from like Wisconsin coming to Ohio to testify on this. It was ridiculous, but they basically eventually did come up with that rule. But it was a lot of pressure from us saying, this is ridiculous. Why are people who don't live here, you know, up here making public comment? So put the pressure on your school board to make those rules. But Adrian, another question?
Sure. Okay. Oh, so this goes specifically to, I think, something Jen and Stefana were talking about. When you offer the option of like, okay, if you're going to remove this book, you have to provide certain replacement books. Is it like, does it have to be on a similar topic, or could they just like explicitly require that it be on a similar topic?
Yes, very specifically. I had privately asked my school board rep I said, okay, fine, you're going to pull genderqueer, but why don't you say, here are 5 other titles that cover the same exact topic that we do have available in our school library? And she was like, oh yeah, that's great. And nothing happened. And then a month later, Stefana and I had a personal meeting with her. We brought it up again. She was like, yeah, that's great. Nothing happened. She then actually brought it up at a school board meeting. And the rest of the school board was like, nah, we're good. So yeah, it should be something, it should be along the same topic, the same theme, you know, it should be LGBTQ, you know, especially if it's one specifically about being gender binary, it should be about trans or binary students, right? It only makes sense.
I'm actually going to call, because I see Bridget in the comments, and Bridget's a librarian in Tennessee who I spoke to, and she actually educated me about this. So Bridget, do you want to tell people, like, is that, I know the American Library Association has rules on this. I don't know if she's still there. I thought I saw her in the chat.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't find my unmute. Yeah, so it is supposed to be, if a book is banned or if a book is challenged or is removed because of a certain, for whatever reason, the replacement book that is suggested is supposed to have a similar main, like if it's the main character that's the issue, or if the main character happens to be bisexual or trans or African American, then that should be replaced by a book with that same type of a character.
Thank you. And thank you, Bridget. I knew you'd know the answer to all of that. And she had sent me to the American Library Association. And when I email you guys tomorrow with the talking points and other things, I will send you some resources such as the American Library Association, the National Coalition Against Censorship. There's lots of great organizations where you can go to get information. So I'm going to send you some of those resources just to have those. All right, why don't we do one more question, Adrian, if there is one, and then we will jump off because I know you've
Is
been on here for a
Rasha
while.
still on? Because
No.
we did have a couple questions. She's not still on?
No, she's not. She had to go feed her family.
Oh, okay. Because there were some questions about like her experiences. Let me see. That's pretty much it for the questions, unless there's any final ones that have been tossed in the chat. I don't see any additional ones.
Adrian, Amanda is on from Loudon for All. She said, if you have any questions that's about Loudon for All, she might be able to answer them.
Okay, sure. So one was just, did you encounter big PACs sending droves of people in for the opposition and bombarding your school district? And and if so, how did you handle that?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have had people busing people from other parts of Virginia and from Liberty University to rallies at our school board. And they're always accusing the left of busing people. We ran a bus from within our county to help people who didn't have transportation to get to the school board meetings. And that was like a huge controversy, but they're actually busing people from outside the county.
Okay, and then one more question. Rasha mentioned that you formed a PAC in Virginia, and so the question is, are school board members allowed to be a part of the PAC, or possibly they mean like donate to the PAC? I'm not sure.
I assume that they could. We don't, I mean, it's just 4 of us that are on the board of the PAC and none of us are school board members. But I think politicians can be members of PACs. I don't know any limitations. Maybe other people know.
I think you'd have to look at every state. Every state would have different laws for PACs. If it's a state level PAC, you probably would want to get legal advice. I would think it'd be hard for, like, if I was an elected official, I would not be on a PAC because then they couldn't contribute to me.
Virginia's
either.
the Wild West on that kind of stuff. Anything
Oh, that's
goes,
right. That's
really,
right.
but in every other state, there's pretty strict rules, and a politician would not be a member of a PAC. That coordination would be prohibited.
Yeah, Virginia's pretty much everything goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, just as we're closing up here, Julie, I think that it's just so important to remember that each of us have our own life experience and perspective, whether you're a librarian, a teacher, a mom, or all of the above in some capacity. And when we think about talking about these issues, it is owning that voice that is so important. You are an expert because of your experience. If you're not a First Amendment lawyer, or that's not your background, like that does not, you are not at that school board meeting or talking among your friends to play that role. And so I just need to remind us, and I hope we can all just own our power here and our voices, that who you are, you have expertise because of who you are, and bringing that voice and that perspective is going to be the most persuasive and convincing thing that you can bring as you're talking to other parents, to other teachers, et cetera. So with the messaging that we offer, and we're going to be providing briefings and resources from, groups that do come from, constitutional legal expertise and background, and we're going to help resource you guys in terms of anything you need. But when you're talking in your communities and at your school board meetings, remember your audience, and to just bring your own experience and who you are. You are more qualified than you think. And so just own that voice.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie. And 100%, you guys, honestly, the personal stories and personal impacts and talking about how this is impacting your life and the students, and that everybody is super powerful, and definitely own your power and use your voice. We know you can do it. Thank you so much for Stefana and Jen for coming and talking, and for Rasha. And I know she's gone, but appreciate them coming and sharing their on the ground experience. And I hope everybody has a fabulous rest of their evening.